My name is David Foster. I'm a visual artist, a musician and a lecturer in film here at the University of Reading. What drew me to working in the way that I've been working since around 2011, which is going out, exploring places, primarily in England, but also sometimes in other places such as parts of the United States, parts of Ireland, parts of Eastern and Central Europe. But primarily, I suppose, I've been interested in this land that we call England, and in exploring the land, both rural areas and sometimes towns and cities to some degree as well. And I've been driven to do this, I suppose. I've been compelled to do this because it's something I find very enjoyable, first of all. So I pursue what I'm passionate about, and that's probably the primary motivation in kind of going out, walking around, cycling around. I don't use a car. I get around on foot and by bicycle and using trains and buses and things. My work is very much about that process of sort of going out and exploring the world, exploring the land, exploring places. Yeah, making images is sort of almost a sort of byproduct of that in some way. So like most people, when I go somewhere, I want to make a kind of record of having been there, having seen things and objects and landscapes and trees and plants and whatever it might be, and the images that have come out of that, and some of them I felt that I wanted to share them. Again, like everyone does, we like to make pictures and share them with others, and through that kind of through sharing them with other people, we find meaning and value in that. And my work is no different. I've simply kind of liked to make prints and put on the wall images that I've that I want other people to see, that I think are worth looking at, and that's really been the kind of those things, those processes have been the sort of primary motivations of my practice, which really sort of took place. It's sort of somewhat in the past now. It was very much something I was doing between about 2011 and about 2023. I've sort of slightly moved on and I'm slightly doing other things now, but so I'm now in a position where I can sort of look back at that work and maybe think about it from a somewhat more sort of I'm not inside it as much as I was when I was talking about it with, when I showed the work in exhibitions between 2016 and sort of 2022. I had sort of these 5 exhibitions, and I got to experience other people's responses to the work and talk about it with them, and that was a very, very rewarding and sort of important part of the experience for me, and part of the process for me. Participating in a kind of lineage, I suppose, of artists and writers and thinkers who have explored the land in these kind of particular sort of ways, where it's not simply about the kind of everyday experience of being in a place. It's about somehow kind of tuning in um, to the sort of energies, atmosphere, of wherever you happen to be. And again, it's not something that is in any way highfalutin or exclusive or particularly intellectual. It's simply what I think we all do, is that we respond emotionally to wherever we happen to be. And it's just, I suppose, making that a bit more of a kind of conscious activity, and really being sort of inserting myself into those kind of lineages or those kind of practices that we might describe as sort of psychogeographic. Is part of the romance of the work for me, if you like. What the work is about for me is that sort of it's both the romance of England and making a romance of one's own experience, if you like. Very much what has sort of driven what I was doing for those sort of 10 or 12 years, I suppose. And the pictures, the images and the videos and things, something of the sort of product or offspring, I suppose, of that kind of romance, between me and the land, if you like. I think the primary motive for having explored double exposure photography so much since 2016, the primary motive is that it's something that I've found very enjoyable. So I've just found that approach to making images with a camera exciting to me. So it's been something that I've just been driven to do through enjoying it, through finding it a stimulating way to respond to places or record somehow my visual experience of places. So that's the primary sort of motivation, and I suppose that's also connected to more aesthetic concerns around approach of making double exposure photographs allows for an enormous amount of playfulness and experimentation and creativity. And I've just really enjoyed being playful and experimental and creative in that way. And I make hundreds and hundreds of pictures, try things out. Obviously most things never see the light of day, and then just a very few pictures I will take forward and print and show, hopefully, put on walls for other people to look at. But the experimentation and sort of playfulness that making double exposures kind of affords, is very enjoyable and very kind of stimulating. So it's really a completely different practice in a way to sort of regular photography. This combining of two images, but it does have, as well as being playful and creative, there are also constraints and boundaries, because you're still working with photography, so you only can work with what is in front of you, essentially. You can't magic things up that don't exist. So there is still this kind of constraint involved, and the sort of a sense of kind of being bounded by certain constraints. And I think that balance between possibility and constraint is something that it works for me somehow, that sort of appeals to me, that you can be very playful and creative, but within certain constraints of where you happen to be, and what you can see and what you can discover. And I mean, it is about that balance between finding and discovering things and forging and creating things. So it becomes, again, it's sort of it has elements of both things, of discovering and of creating. And I think that that balance really appeals to me. That sometimes comes into it is this sort of, I'm very interested, or have been for a long time, in kind of the borderline or boundary between figuration and abstraction. This is one of the reasons why the work of Jack, the Irish painter Jack B. Yeats, appeals to me so much, because he often explores that boundary, that meeting edge between the figurative and the abstract, and so I made some work in response to his work and the places associated with his work about 10 years ago. And so I think that working with double exposure photography can sometimes, not always, but sometimes allow me to explore that interface, if you like, between abstraction and figuration. I'm really interested in sort of the ways in which these sort of forms of visual experience kind of meet and bleed into each other. So that's also that's also in there. It's what I've been driven to do, and I found maybe just the sort of standard practice of kind of regular photography to be a bit it wasn't doing what I wanted to do when I'm out exploring and sort of discovering things, and so that that's why I've worked with it so much. So I'm never looking to express any particular idea or story. I mean, of course, what visual art is, or one of the things that visual art is that which sort of can't be expressed in any other way. So certainly when I make images, I'm not looking to tell a story or somehow encapsulate an idea or concept or anything like that. Yeah, it's simply that these are the images that I'm driven to make, that I want to make. As for the working in a few different kinds of media, I mean, largely I have worked with photography, but I've also made some work with video, and more recently starting to play around a bit more with 16mm film. And with the video work, I think I just thought it would be interesting to make some time-based work, because I have a long-standing interest in kind of experimental time-based work. So when I applied to the Arts Council, that was part of it, that I would make some work with still images and some time-based work. And I think I was also, in doing that, I've mentioned already this word, sort of romance, which I think is very pertinent to, to what I do. But I think I was interested in sort of seeing if it was possible to work with video in a sort of romantic way, because it's such an unromantic medium on the whole, unlike film, which is has this real romance to it. But video is seen as this, for lots of very good reasons, is kind of seen as this sort of very utilitarian medium, I think, somehow, or very kind of cold and conceptual medium, certainly in terms of the work that has usually been made with it by visual artists sort of over the last few decades. So I was interested to sort of see if I could work romantically with video, I guess. And I suppose part of the way that I did that was actually to sort of invert the idea of moving image really, and so I made moving images. You know, I made video work that was largely composed of things which didn't move, particularly dead trees. You know, I was made several video pieces which are sort of like studies of dead trees, fallen trees. And I was interested in sort of, again, a balance between discovering images and creating images. I was interested in what kind of, in all the great variety of shapes that one could make out of this single fallen tree, the single dead tree. And that was somehow sort of connected to more sort of, I don't know, more romantic kind of conceptions about nature. So yeah, that was the sort of video work really. But it's very much like all, you know, video art. It's supposed to be seen in the gallery context really. So it doesn't really work in other. You know, it's not really designed to be, you know, for people to sort of look, you know, watch it online, even though it is there online. But it's more sort of installation-based work, really, and that's how I've shown it in you know, when I've shown it in my exhibitions. It's been, you know, usually on a sort of large screen. You know, for the most part, of course, people don't really engage with it because, you know, video art takes a big investment of time and attention to properly engage with it. But one or two people have, and that's been, you know, that's made it kind of worthwhile. As for found objects, that really came out of my engagement with Paul Nash. So, you know, I did this 3-part project funded by Arts Council England, which responded to a Paul Nash, who was an English painter and writer, primarily a painter, but also a writer, photographer. You know, responded to kind of his work and the places associated with his work. So it was kind of setting myself up in a kind of dialogue with, you know, with Nash, with his work, with the places that he, the places he worked in, the places that he made images of. And Nash was one of the first people to take objects from the landscape, what one critic has described as kind of rural litter, you know, take bits of tree or whatever and just exhibit them in a gallery, just appropriate them as an artwork. And in doing so, Nash sort of invests these objects with a kind of talismanic kind of charge. So during my kind of you know, peregrinations around you know, sort of Nash country, you know, I again sort of wanted to sort of insert myself into this kind of lineage, I suppose, find objects that I felt had a kind of charge to them, a kind of meaning to them, and which could kind of be in dialogue with the images and with the videos. Since then, picking up objects you know, from the countryside and things is something that I haven't done as much, and certainly haven't kind of showed them as artwork in the way that I did sort of between 2016 and 2020. But I mean, I love objects, and I kind of, but I've had to kind of curb my tendency to sort of pick up every sort of stone or stick that sort of appeals to me. The role of any artist is to be themselves as much as possible, you know, and to make work that has integrity, you know, whatever that means. And I mean, I suppose what it often means is not sort of pursuing sort of trends or fashions or whatever is going to be popular, but actually, you know, pursuing what it is that your soul kind of wants you to, you know, wants you to follow. And so that you know, I guess that's one way of thinking about integrity. That would be my sense of what an artist, you know, is important in an artist. But there's so many things that an artist might be that it's sort of it's very difficult to sort of generalize and say what I think their role ought to be in kind of dealing with, you know, this you know, huge, endless topic of kind of cultural history. Working creatively in whatever medium, you know, the most important thing, if they want to make valuable work, you know, work that is valuable in not just in a sort of monetary sense, but is valuable in a kind of broader sense and valuable to themselves, then having the sort of integrity and sort of courage, I suppose, to follow their own path and their own inclinations is going to probably be important. I think that you know, the path of any creative individual is you know, one which is going to kind of take you through, yeah, that pursuit of whatever it is that sparks you, and that, you know, preoccupies you and sort of fires you up. So that's about the only sort of that's about the only advice I can give, I think. Especially since I'm probably not in a very good place to offer any advice. So I think, yeah, it would probably just be restricted to that. So I mentioned earlier that I'm now really looking back on a body of work that I made sort of between about, well, various bodies of work that I made between about 2011 and about 2022, 2023. I'm still working a bit with 16mm film, and actually my current project is about combining my own music with 16mm film. So yeah, it's going to be the first sort of time that I've sort of really put my own music out there into the world. So yeah, that's an ongoing thing, and we'll see how that pans out. As for the kind of themes, you know, it's much as I've sort of explored before, really, which is, you know, about place and nature and my own, you know, the importance of nature to me, really, and how much it sort of connects me, you know, to, well, my memories, my experiences, and myself. It has a relationship to the work I've done in the past, in the sense that, I suppose, like a lot of artists say, what they're really doing is kind of channeling something sort of higher than themselves, really. That it's not really them making the work, it's more that they're a kind of channel for something outside of themselves to kind of to be expressed and to sort of find expression in the world, and that's certainly been very characteristic of how my experience has been of making music, just guitar and voice, and that sort of line of creative activity, you know, has been what I've been sort of pursuing for the last couple of years, and will probably be, you know, what I'll be pursuing, in the future as well. So yeah, that's where I'm at currently, and I'm excited about about, you know, what the future holds in terms of this kind of rather new direction that I'm taking, but it does take from where I've been as well, in terms of 16mm film. Something will emerge in the next few weeks or months, so we'll see.